I'm Kelsey. And we're being recorded, so we can share this with other folks who missed today. I'm Kelsey. I'm one of the student organizers of Justice Initiative, and this is my third year participating. I'm so grateful for this community and how it's growing and evolving. I'm grateful to you all for your interest in potentially joining us for another incredible year. I'm going to turn it over first to Enumale, one of the dear hearts of the Justice Initiative, whose vision is why we are all gathered in this Zoom space, and has done so much to make this dream a reality and for it to continue to grow. And she's going to ground us about why JI exists and why it's important in this time. And then from Enumale, we'll go to John to give an overview of what JI is going to look like this year. Enumale, I'll turn it to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I get started, I actually think that we do have a land acknowledgement planned, so which is just a practice we have typically before every JI session, just to kind of ground ourselves and move forward with that knowledge and practice in mind. So I'm actually going to start by kicking it over to Ben, and then I will jump in with the origins and vision of JI.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben. It's good to see everyone again. Excuse me. So as we gather in this virtual space today, we acknowledge that the ground beneath our feet is the home of Indigenous peoples, many of whom have faced violence, discrimination, and have been forced to leave for other lands. So we want to make a practice of taking this moment at the start of our meetings to recognize and appreciate the peoples who are the first to live upon the land where we now sit, wherever we are in the world today. And so I'm personally located in Dallas, Texas, where there are no federally recognized tribes today. This is in large part because of multiple concerted genocides carried out by Texas colonizers throughout the 1800s, which were waged indiscriminately against all Indigenous peoples. Prior to these atrocities, there were no tribes that predominantly occupied the land now called Dallas, but rather many tribes shared in using its resources and trading routes, including the Wichita, Comanche, Caddo, Cherokee, and others. The city of Dallas was founded at the intersection of many popular native trading routes and communities in 1841, only after the horrendous accidents of the Republic of Texas. And Dallas and Texas have been wildly successful in erasing these atrocities. The popular narrative around its founding is quote from a famous book that for some reason Dallas people love, is that Dallas wasn't there until suddenly it was called forth in the minds of white men. It supposedly just came into existence in 1841, ignoring thousands of years of Native history. So today we want to take the time to acknowledge that Dallas's story is unfortunately far from unique. And I found this quote in a Fort Worth newspaper especially powerful. Everywhere you walk today, where you work, where you eat, where you play with your children, where you will sleep tonight is where Indian peoples walked, worked, ate, played with their children, and slept for centuries before our ancestors violently took it. Our lives and happiness are built on the deaths and sorrows of Native American peoples. Our liberty is built on their subjugation. Unfortunately, we can't change the past, but we can live responsibly with it. And I think it's important for us to know that living responsibly with that past means not just acknowledging the history, but acknowledging our obligation, love, and continued support for the Indigenous communities it affected. Good to see everyone.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was wonderful. So everyone, as Kelsey said, I am Enumale Agada. I, along with John Hanson and Justin Hansford, are one of the organizers of the Justice Initiative. Very, very happy to have you here. I know you all have heard a lot of hype, but you might be wondering, what exactly is the Justice Initiative? What is JI? And that is what I am here to tell you. That's what this whole session is here to tell you. So let me start by just a bit about myself, just to kind of ground my story and my narrative. I graduated from Harvard Law School in 2017, and since then have been living in DC, practiced at a firm, and now work as oversight counsel in the House of Representatives and as an advisor to the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, also in the House of Representatives. So a bit about where JI came from. We started in 2020. It was a really pivotal moment, kind of just in terms of where everybody was socially. This was kind of at the start of the pandemic. George Floyd had just been murdered. And that was what John likes to call the granite to clay moment, where people in our society were actually willing finally to question many of the structures and the systems in our society that were kind of viewed as cemented or just the way it is. And I think the pandemic also had a lot of us thinking about our interconnectedness as human beings, as a society, and the responsibility that we all have to each other. I know that myself personally and many other lawyers were questioning the role that lawyers and the legal system played in buttressing the existing systems of inequality and what role we could play in dismantling them and reimagining a more equitable future. I also know that many law students at this time were grappling with a traditional legal education system that seemed to teach them how to support the existing systems of inequality rather than how to dismantle them, and did not teach them how to organize and advocate on behalf of the marginalized communities, which for many of us is why we went to law school in the first place. And that really resonated very deeply with me, because I remember during law school, my first year, sitting in, I don't like the first weeks of contracts class and thinking, this is not why I came to law school. And I feel utterly and completely disconnected from issues of justice and the very things that made me want to be a lawyer. This is, I have learned, is not at all an uncommon experience. I think many people, especially those of us who are social justice focused or work from marginalized communities, came to law school wanting to do very specific work and wanting to gain very specific tools to help people in our communities. And then we're kind of put through a legal education system that's basically like, here's how to think like a lawyer and operate within the existing system. And now go out and make some money. And that was really, really disheartening. And hearing a lot of my fellow classmates, and since I've graduated, a lot of other law students who have echoed that sentiment and have had that experience, JI kind of was born out of that granite to clay moment, as John, I'm sure we'll talk about later, and a kind of just a need that we heard from within the legal community, from law students, to create a space where we could come together, we could discuss, reimagine, and remake the role that lawyers, law students, future law students, and the legal profession, the legal system at large could play within this society. So for the past 2 years, that has taken the form mostly of Saturday sessions in which our community gathers virtually like this. And we have incredible speakers, and we engage on issues like critical race theory, or how traditional law school classes like property or contracts actually reinforce the existing systems of inequality instead of teaching us how to dismantle those systems. We also discuss how to take care of ourselves doing this very difficult and at times harrowing and relentless work. So that has been what JI has been for the past 2 years, a space where we can all gather, a safe space where we can all gather and have these discussions that often are being left out of law school classrooms, or law firm conference rooms, or even on the Hill, conversations that are not being had in those spaces. We kind of have them and then are able to go into our communities and spread the JI gospel, basically. In terms of the future, John and Justin will get into this a bit more deeply, but our hope for this year of Justice Initiative is to continue to build and deepen our bond as a community. As you'll see, we are a very tight-knit group, and JI, I think over the past few years, for me personally, I know for a lot of the people here, has been kind of a source of constant strength and comfort and inspiration. So our hope is to continue building those bonds, certainly. We want to continue to build our power and our mechanisms for dismantling the current power systems, and build more just and equitable systems in their place. So in terms of the specifics, as I said, John and Justin will get into that, but I did also want to note that one of the key things that we thought when we were creating JI was that we wanted it to be responsive to the needs of the moment, whatever those needs may be. And for the past 2 years, we have gone in with an idea of what we wanted to accomplish, an idea of what our sessions wanted to be like, aware that the world moves very quickly, and we did not want to replicate the traditional law school system or law school education system where there's an injustice happening across the street and you're sitting there reading your textbook about a case that happened 20 years ago. So I say that to say that we do always create space to engage and discuss issues that were unforeseen or that we could not anticipate happening. I know that for me, one of my favorite parts of the past few years of JI have been the kind of impromptu sessions that we had after the election and after January 6th, just a space that we could all come in as a community and discuss openly and again in a safe environment, whatever feelings and emotions we have. So I say that to say that JI is something that we plan in advance, but we like to keep it loose in a sense, just to ensure that we are offering what is needed at any given moment. So that is my spiel. Thank you all so much for attending. And I will turn it over to whoever is next. I think that might be John and Justin to discuss the specifics of our vision for JI in this upcoming year.
So I am charged with telling you a bit about the Saturday sessions this year. They're not our only feature, as Enyamali highlighted. We have so much more you can learn about the Justice Initiative, but they are a core part of what we offer. And I want to talk a little bit about why they are what they are this year. You can learn more about what we've been doing the last 2 years by going to the systemicjustice.org website. And on it, there are pages devoted to the Justice Initiative where you can see some of the various elements, including highlights of our mentoring and advising, which Tiffany will talk about later, our community efforts, the various activism of students. You can also watch last year's information session. You can look at what JI participants are saying or have said in the past, and sort of a collection of members who have written us about the effect that JI has had. We have several pages of those if you're interested. You can learn a bit more about why we think the Justice Initiative matters as an institution, what role it's serving in the larger ecosystem, what lane it fills, and what ways it tries to work with others in coalition and struggle to promote a more just world. You can learn about our remarkable collection of panelists and speakers and presenters over these last couple of years, where you can gain some sense of what our priorities are and whose voices we center as significant, and maybe contrast those with the typical legal educational experience. But what I want to speak to mostly about what shapes this year's curriculum and in the Saturday sessions this year has a lot to do with why, with something that I think all of us organizing the Justice Initiative felt that this year is actually different. For you law students at the beginning of this school year, it's pretty much law school as usual. Your professors and the administrations of most law schools, not all of them, but most, are acting like their mission today is more or less the same as it was 10 years ago. And yet we're all doing this in the midst of a moment unlike anything any of us have seen in our lifetimes. It's a moment of profound anti-democratic retrenchment in which toxic disinformation, conspiracy, and paranoia combine to foment racialized distrust, anger, and violence, and undermine the modest racial reckoning that seemed to be unfolding 2 years ago. It's a moment when the very planet upon which our survival as a species depends, it's collapsing toward human uninhabitability. It's a moment when, after decades and decades of denial and deception, the most powerful interests in our society, those who have profited most and are threatened least from the environmental catastrophe that they've helped promote, have only recently begun to acknowledge the problem, offering responses that are at best trivial, shallow, and performative. It's a moment of unhinged right-wing attacks on truth and the celebration of historical amnesia, when critical race theory and those who teach the truth are being routinely targeted and deployed as a tool of division in service of white backlash and the revival of American apartheid. It's a moment when the Supreme Court has been unmasked as the nakedly political and undemocratic institution that it has long been, as its most powerful members openly lurch rightward to fulfill their own unaccountable imaginations and 18th century fantasies. It's a moment when our law schools tend to be sites of complicity, not resistance. This is, in short, an apocalyptic moment. The growing right-wing backlash and the anti-democratic trends towards authoritarianism and fascism are nothing but symptoms in response to the deep-rooted systems that the law, the legal profession, and legal education have been producing and protecting. The world we find ourselves in didn't happen on its own. It won't be solved on its own, but it is our world nonetheless. There is, I think, some good news. All of these systems and most of their consequences are human constructions. They've been designed and refined and maintained and defended by people. They're not inevitable. We can change them. We must change them. I'm in my 60s. Most of you are in your 20s and 30s. And quite honestly, I seriously doubt that you will get to be my age without living through a radical change one way or the other. You are here because you want radical change for justice. The Justice Initiative and the people devoted to it are here for the same reason. And that brings me finally to the Saturday sessions. In August, with those concerns in mind and those urgencies in mind, I reached out to a dozen lawyers who I knew were doing all they could with the energy they had and the knowledge they had to struggle for justice, although in different ways. I explained that the Justice Initiative this year was hoping to reorient its offerings a bit to respond to the various exigencies of this moment, and that I wanted to get their advice regarding what knowledge, skills, resources, and habits they thought law students and young lawyers committed to advancing social justice should acquire in law school to best prepare themselves for justice-centered careers. One way I put the question to them is, if you were in charge of designing a law school curriculum and community, how would your law school differ from conventional legal education? And this year's Saturday sessions are built on what we've done in the past and the collection of insights gained from that listening tour. So this year, the basic curriculum, imagine it's 10 Saturday sessions for now, will begin, as all of our years do, with a focus on a critical approach to legal education, how to think about what you're doing in law school from a critical perspective, to better understand what Inimali was describing as that kind of strange gaslighting of abstracting away from the real world while injustice unfolds in our presence. Understand how law is contributing and how these doctrines, which seem fairly innocuous in the teaching, are really part of the problem themselves. Then the goal of this year's sessions will be to turn to learning how to build power, build institutions, organize, and make a difference through understanding different theories of change and the challenges of working for change. So the second session will focus on movements and theories of change and their importance for building power. The third will focus on the role of storytelling and narrative and the significance of art, for example, in that space, different kinds of communicating, different kinds of ways of knowing and understanding things, and different ways of challenging the existing arrangements. Then the next will focus on the role of organizing, methods of organizing, and the importance of organizing to build change and the challenges of organizing. Then we will turn to different ways in which lawyers use the conventional tools of law to advance justice. In effect, doing what they can with the limited tools in the toolbox to try to at least prepare the ground for more systemic change. The next session, which will begin in the spring, will be about building our own tools. How is it that you can create new institutions and new organizations, new forms of coalition building, et cetera, to resist in ways that coincide with efforts in law? Then we'll devote some time to how you can build your own practice so that you don't feel you have to go in and to a particular kind of job, but how you can be self-sustaining lawyer working with other independent lawyers or groups of lawyers working to advance justice in different communities. Then we'll spend some time on what some of the people I spoke with described as trauma-informed lawyering and the importance of intergenerational learning. We'll say more about that as we move into the year. And then we're going to ask a question: what does it mean to be a political lawyer? a concept that once had real traction and real meaning in our system has disappeared. And we think it should be something that's reinvigorated, a way of thinking of lawyers not as mere actors for their clients, but as part of a movement, as political, much as we understand the system and most institutions in it are silently political. And then the final session will involve some kind of convening and celebration and future-looking dreaming to end with. Yesterday, Derica Purnell visited Harvard Law School and spoke to an audience of probably about 100 students eager to hear her words. Most of you know of her work as an author for Becoming Abolitionists. She came to talk to us about the urgencies of this moment and law school and organizing. And she said some things that I excerpted in a short video that I'm going to end with about how we might think about student organizing and its importance today.
When you look at the history of organizing in the United States and beyond, student activism has been such a driver in progressive and radical movements for change. And I'll say this right now, I am terrified for the state of student organizing in the United States. I think it's weak. It's very weak. It's been weak for a very long time. I think that the kinds of students that we have now, very interested in being professionalized, are very interested in not taking lots of risks. All of this is undermining our ability to build real solidarity. And we just don't have time for it to be as weak as it is right now. I hope that not only do you, participate in student organizing, but that you also join programs like the Justice Initiative, like who are trying to help, provide some systemic way of political education and analysis between people who are on and off campus, and to put pressure on people who have the power to make long-term systemic change. And I think students are going to be at the forefront of that. Like they literally just have to be. They just have to be. You can't influence your way into that. Like you can't tweet you can't follow, you can't do that. You have to be in genuine struggle, figuring that stuff out and be willing to take risks. But if that is what it's going to take to build the world that we want, then that's what I think we have to endure.
Okay, it's hard to follow Derica always, but I'm going to try. My name is Justin Hansford. I am a law professor at Howard University School of Law, and I am also the director of our Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center at Howard. I am also a critical race theorist. When I was a student at Georgetown Law School, I helped to start the nation's first critical race theory law journal. And during my time there, my experience in law school was at first very challenging. During my first year, you could even use the word boring and very difficult. And I still remember some of the things that were a challenge to me during that time. I always like to say that for law students who are interested in changing the world and working to support the liberation of our people, you face what I call triple trouble in law school. You have to find a way to learn the law well enough to succeed and do well in the law school context. That means spending the same long hours studying case books and understanding statutes and legal opinions as everybody else. In addition to that, as John has talked about so often, we also have to learn what justice is about. And for most of us, our understanding of justice is going to be something completely different from our understanding of the case law that we're presented in law school. What justice looks like and what the legal opinions look like in our law school case books are two totally different things. So the process of learning justice for me involved a deep study of critical race theory. For you, it might involve studying feminist theory in the law or anti-capitalist theories of understanding the law in relation to climate justice, and so many different other issues. And we can only hope that Justice Initiative can be part of that process for you of learning what justice looks like in your struggle for liberation in whatever area you choose. Finally, there's a third element of the challenge before you, which is, of course, the element of getting a job. So we all have to figure out how to move forward in our careers. For those of us focused on making the world a better place, oftentimes that includes public interest careers, searches that oftentimes are not as heavily resourced and supported at our law schools as the corporate law firm job searches are, for obvious reasons. So as a result, you're finding yourself in triple trouble. You have 3 challenges in front of you. You have to juggle all 3 of these different challenges at the same time, and you're oftentimes not as supported as other students are who are focused more so on traditional big law career tracks. So for me, when I came out of law school, I decided to try to find ways to engage myself in political organizing. I ended up in St. Louis, where I had a chance to work with Derica and so many other people in Ferguson, Missouri, trying to fight for the Black Lives Matter movement, fighting for justice for Mike Brown. I've often found myself in places where I would not have been prepared to contribute to these movements if it had not been for my training in critical race theory, in justice movements, and if it had not been for mentors who helped me to find alternative career paths, which led me to the place where I am now, where I can teach critical race theory in law school. And I also teach a movement lawyering clinic at Howard Law School. So in conclusion, I'm hoping that today, as you face these 3 troubles, triple trouble, trying to learn the law, trying to learn justice, and trying to learn how to survive and even thrive in a public interest career, or a career that is directing you in a path that will help you change the world. I'm hoping that Justice Initiative will be a help, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to be a community that will help you on all 3 of those tracks. And we're building a community here that is safe, a safe space for you all, a community that will be supportive, and a community that will be hopefully a joy to you in the same way it's been a joy to me and so many of us to be a participant in the community for the past 3 years. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my remarks. I'm going to pass the mic to Tiffany, who is going to talk to us about how we can work together to help you solve that 3rd problem, in particular, how to move forward in your career as a justice worker. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Yes, I'm Tiffany Smith, and I have been organizing the mentorship and career services part of the Justice Initiative. So what we try to do is, especially for those in schools that don't have strong career services or links to other lawyers and communities, we try, or public interest in general, we try to connect our students who want mentors with mentors doing the work they want to do, or having something in common with them that's important to them. And then we do career sessions. So that may be everything from how to start thinking about a career in public interest, to introducing students to people doing the work they want to do, the kinds of work they want to do. So we try to get a feel for what the students want, and then try to give them what they want to help them progress on their journey toward being a game changer in the legal field. So I don't have any more to say, because I'm going to go along and pass it over to Zoe for a great video. Thank you.
Hi there. Are you thinking about applying to the Justice Initiative program? I would say that you should feel encouraged to do so.
Hi, my name's Dorna Kazini Justice Initiative provided me with a forum, a community, a sense of belonging in our Saturday meetings.
A Just Initiative had taught me how to apply this law in a specific case with some human rights issues.
Lawyers, we are supposed to be the people responsible for bringing more justice into the world. But we can't do that unless we understand how to do that.
The things that I didn't think I would need to learn, like I wouldn't have thought to learn, I didn't know existed to learn. And so I think like JI has given me that as well.
This initiative has really completed my legal education in a way that I feel like it wasn't full before. It's been very affirming and feels like we're really talking about the things that matter, and it really changed my career path and kind of pulled me out of the big law trap and fulfilled my education and given me a lovely community of people to get to know.
I even helped my Just Initiative mentor with his book chapter about diversity and equality in legal education.
Hi y'all, my name is Travis and I've been part of the Justice Initiative for the past 2 years. I feel really lucky to have found JI because there's so much that I wouldn't have learned had I gone through law school without it.
Without student movements, there would be no critical race theory. That is the beginning, middle, and the end of critical race theory historiography.
I discovered Justice Initiative in my 3L year last year, and it was the richest part of my year in law school. I wish so much that I had had the advantage of participating in Justice Initiative earlier in my law school career.
I wish I had it as a 1L. I feel like that would have made such a difference. And so even having it as a 2L and 3L just made like an enormous difference for me.
I almost quit law school. And I don't think that I would have stayed in law school without Justice Initiative.
I know that the law school experience can make it seem like you can't take on one more thing.
School is so difficult, and there's such a sense of isolation.
Law school doesn't accept you as your full self, so you have to make yourself smaller. You have to make yourself palatable. You have to perform.
It's so nice to be able to say, like, there is a world outside of this.
Those of us who are interested in justice work are interested in learning about how to deconstruct that and how to put in place systems that help our communities to thrive.
JI is everything I wanted law school to be. It's been a solace, it's been affirming, it's been inspiring and empowering.
We want students to go out and change the legal system for the better and to solve long-standing social problems. Then they can't only learn the way that things have always been done.
Knowing that this is starting up again in a couple of weeks has like helped me to kind of hang on, and I will again be in community, and I will be having the conversations that I came to law school to have that we're just not having. And I have people that I can look to for guidance and wisdom and information and inspiration to really keep me going.
About how your community is established, and it's very, very powerful to hear that, because actually the genesis of critical race theory itself comes out of a similar kind of community and dedication and commitment to thinking about radical transformation.
In the Saturday sessions that we have, there are very real conversations about concentrations of power within the legal system, histories of oppression that have kept resources and opportunities away from certain people, and how new lawyers can take a justice-centered approach to confronting failing and unjust systems.
All of these younger people give me so much hope and so much inspiration, and I think you will change the world. So
the Justice Initiative is a program, is a community of people that are like-minded and that will help you to find your way, help you to understand some of the things that you're experiencing and learning in law school. And I just want to encourage you to sign up and join.
Like a real lighthouse when things get really dark in law school and you don't think that it's possible to change the system as is, and shift culture and powers that be. So it just makes me believe that some impossible things are possible.
You know, we need community. It takes a village to do this. So it's a love letter.
I want to say thank you so much to Brianna, who put that incredible love letter to JI together, and for everyone who shared their perspectives and reflections on JI so that we could use it for that video. It's really beautiful and touching to see. I'm very excited that now we're going to transition into our panel discussion of folks reflecting on the importance of JI. So if we could have Connie, Rachel, and Iltaf spotlighted as panelists, that would be awesome. Thank you all so much for joining and taking the time to be in our community. So appreciate it. I was hoping you all could start with just what you think is missing in legal education and training and how the Justice Initiative helps to fill those gaps. And maybe let's go Iltaf, Rachel, and then Connie for this question. So Iltaf, if you could start us off.
I feel like I have a million things to say about what's missing. Like, really, law school only serves to like indoctrinate you into this system that just perpetually minoritizes our communities. And that's something I caught on to fairly early on in law school. I found JI when I was a 1L, which I'm very thankful for. And for folks like us who enter law school, like actually wanting to do more than just learn and interpret how the law is working right now, but want to change it, who recognize that there are issues with the system, who've experienced the issues with the system. Law school doesn't tell you how to do that. It actually encourages that you don't. It encourages that you follow the way things are. It encourages this very individualist mindset of like survival, just, you know, keep it pushing, stick your head in the book, stick to what you know, because the system's not going to change because of how rigid it is. And that's not true. And I'm really grateful for a community like JI to have a group of people who will not only validate the suspicions that I have about how the system can actually change, but give you the actual tools to dissect some of those arguments. And I'll try to keep it brief, but I'll never forget how we sat in a JI session the Saturday before talking about a specific case in property that's really important to understanding how the foundation of like US sovereignty was based on white supremacy. And I would not have known that or gotten that from the case had we not had a JI session like the Saturday before class. That Monday, I was able to walk in and add to what the professor was saying, like, wait, no, actually, what this case means is, and being able to like have that tool with me is really useful against a lot of the gaslighting you get in law school. So law school's missing a lot. And I think JI has been really important to me to supplement and fill in all of those gaps.
That was so amazing that I forgot the question, but I can't even talk about JI without smiling because that's how amazing it is to know that I'm like back in space with these same folks. In my law school class, our graduating class, there were about 10 Black students, and we were split into 6 sections. So my section had only one other Black person in the entire section. And one of the huge things I realized that law school was missing was diversity. And when I spoke out about that, the way that folks treated me was isolating, ostracizing, but also I realized that I thought at the time that I might not be in the right place because this was not the place for things that people who valued other human beings were, or at least that's not how it seemed. But finding the Justice Initiative and realizing that there are people doing the work, there are people who have the counter narratives in the background, and who can decolonize the mind in a way, in a legal analysis, and understand how we have been directed towards thinking about things in a certain way, and provide a different perspective. My school did not offer that. I was one of the inaugural fellows at our anti-racism center, and we still right now to this day at my law school don't have a way to report when issues of racial animus and professor tomfoolery happen at the law school. So JI provided not only a supplemental legal education, but support and sources and receipts to back up the arguments that I was making, and explain to my law school administration why what was going on was not acceptable and would not be allowed to continue. And when I decided that I liked corporate law, JI wrapped their arms around me and said, that's okay, because you can fight for social justice from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you do decide to go to a big firm, because I know you're going to tell those people when they're doing something that is unacceptable, and you are not afraid to speak out and be the sole voice. So, I mean, the legal education is lacking a lot, but being a part of the Justice Initiative has empowered me to create a better future in a way that I just don't even know if I would have been able to sustain myself in law school if I hadn't had it.
Thanks so much. Hi, all. I'm Connie. I use she, her pronouns, and my voice is a little off because after traveling, I've picked up some kind of post-travel illness, and just knocking on wood that it's not COVID. My PCR test comes back later. We'll see, but I'm here. And I was really excited to get Professor Hanson-John's email about the Justice Initiative, because I think that these spaces are so important for being able to navigate law school and life as a young lawyer. I think, again, so much is lacking in law school and a legal education, but and a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's attached to an academy, an academic institution. And there's a good line, Moten says the only ethical relationship to the university is theft. It might be a bit of a paraphrase, so someone else can correct me on that. Please do come correct. But the idea is, having a cadre of people that you can band together with to get as much as you can out of these institutions, while also finding fuel and fire for the movements that you do care about outside of the law school or from within the law school, or trying to bring these movements into the law school, I think is incredibly valuable. I think what is really valuable about Justice Initiative is that it really starts to connect just through the alumni who come through, I think, or I remember, if it wasn't Justice Initiative, other spaces where was one of the organizers for Critical Race Theory Conference in law school, really just trying to bring current practitioners, like current community lawyers or current organizers, right, who are grounded in these intergenerational movements where it's not new for them. The different movements, whether it's abolition or climate justice, have been going on for decades and decades and decades. And so it's really different to sit down with people who have been seeing the same BS for decades. And it might manifest slightly differently, but having this kind of intergenerational support is something that I found before law school and during and at my current organization, where we have community organizers who have been living where they've been living in the shadow of oil refineries for their entire lives, but have also been fighting and winning campaigns against them for their entire lives. And so when you see setbacks, when you see crazy political deals being put on the table, asking you essentially to choose between your children, or feeling like literally there's an apocalypse that no one is paying attention to. It's not just, I think, emotionally, but also tactically and strategically and intellectually really important to have that kind of wealth of knowledge to guide your journey, or my journey, at least it's been as a young lawyer, because a lot of the times what we're asked to do is to go into spaces that other people don't have access to, whether it's with regulators or decision makers or in courts, and say something to like bring the voices of and the experiences of people whose bodies know best what's actually happening on the ground, and what injustice really means, and to actually dictate what the solutions are. So I think that, this is really, I love, hearing about how this community has grown, how this community has been, but a lot of it really is, I think, connecting to this like deep intergenerational organizing, and, grounding yourself, being able to ground yourself in this work and knowing that you're not alone.
Amazing. Thank you all for what you shared. I'm really struck by how it tied together, and also how each of you ended up raising themes that align very well with what John outlined in terms of things we want to dig deeper into over the course of our programming this year. We can maybe go in the same order again, but I was hoping you all could speak to why JI is particularly important in this moment. John started to kind of build us thinking in this direction with his remarks earlier, but if you could each speak to that. Eltaf, I'll go to you again.
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback off of some of what John was saying earlier about the summer 2020 with like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, like all of that was going on. We've got protests, and this was me like entering my 1L year. So for me to think right now that even now is like way more important, cumulatively, so much has happened between then. So we've got that movement, we've got all of the foolishness from the Supreme Court this summer, which I'm sure all y'all followed, like stripping away rights left and right, even beyond just Dobbs, right? Like so much continues to happen that really like debunks that myth that they teach you in law school of like neutrality, of like respect for a system, of like a revered process that's like so refined and respectable that we can't like dare to disrupt it because it like disrupts the integrity of, no, none of that existed. And it confirms that suspicion that a lot of like marginalized people have had from the beginning. Like you don't need these archaic structures. You abandon them whenever it's convenient for you in your narrative, right? And we're taught about how much power the legal system holds, and we watch how much power the legal system holds over everyone's lives. But also like we should refuse to believe that with all that power, somehow law students and lawyers are unable to use it or do anything with it for good. And so that's why I think JI is really important, because not only are we collaborating with like-minded students across the country, sometimes people in other countries as well, to try to brainstorm solutions, to try to like dare to imagine a future that could be better. But we're actually like have all these different communities. We've got experts, we've got students, we've got people who are on the ground practicing, so that you can see all of the change working in real life. Because it's really easy right now to look at the state of the world right now and feel just like this existential sort of like doom. Like this is the way things are, this is the way things are going to continue to be. What can I realistically do to change that? And I think JI has introduced me to so many people who are challenging these things, who are on the ground actually doing the work that isn't as visible. It's not in the news. You're not going to see it everywhere you go. It's not going to be what comes to mind when people tell you about lawyers or what lawyering is or what they do. But it exists. And when these movements need people to continue to fuel them, JI is one of those hubs, those centers of people who are ready to do that work. And I think expanding that, especially right now, is super important.
So honestly, law school makes you feel like you're out of your mind anyway, even if you don't care about social justice, because of just how stressful it is and kind of how they think you're just not supposed to be a human being and just like read like 18 hours a day, go to class the other 6, and then find time to like sleep, eat, breathe, and you're supposed to exercise, like Lord. So for me, the reason JI was so important was because Justice Initiative was the only place I could breathe, where I could take a second and focus on why the awful things that I was learning were important and how I could use that knowledge to do something constructive with it. And Donald Trump just said that he said we're going to see, if he's indicted, we're going to see something like we've never seen before. Like, I'm a history buff, so I know about the Wilmington insurrection of 1898, and I know that there was a failed attempt before they were successful. So we have to look to history and understand the moment we are in. I hate to be the person to drop the fascist bomb, but like, we have to understand the role that we can play through the legal system. And they're not teaching you that in law school. They're teaching you to fall in line. So that's why that's like, I'm here. I already graduated. I'll still be here, because even if I've heard these things a million times, there's always something new that I can get out of it. And there's always a different way I can think about the issues that we're facing and potential solutions.
Yeah. In addition to the rise of, or really, I think the public acknowledgement now of, the fascist movements in our country and across the world, I think that I guess at the center, I don't know what you call them, but aside from political parties, I think that there's a large co-optation of the language around diversity, or the language around justice even, especially I know I can see it a lot with greenwashing and environmental justice. It's certainly all over law school, but I think that it means that we just have to be a lot sharper. And critical race theory is an incredible field and has, through it woven anti-capitalist and feminist and post-colonial theory woven throughout it. And I think that, what this generation of lawyers and law students, really needs to put pressure on is how do we keep updating that, and how do we keep responding to the language that we're seeing come out of elected officials now, coming out of different movements now, and to make sure that we're distinguishing between what is strategic campaigns or strategic big tents that we're building, but also being really, really clear about where we need to go as movements, especially on the left, to counter this kind of really dangerous anti-democratic, this really dangerous rise in fascist power that a lot of folks who haven't really recognized the extremism that's in this country are tacitly supporting.
Thank you all so much. This is really a preview of how JI and our speakers come with a critique. They come with the citations. Shout out Rachel for that. With the analysis, with the wisdom, and with the heart to really ground us, affirm us, and fire us up to keep going. So thank you, Iltaf. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Connie. It means so much to hear from you all today, and to have you a part of the Justice Initiative community.
that was a really lovely closing. I just wanted to say, I hope everyone really takes some time to take care of themselves. I think another reason why this is so important is that we're in the middle of a pandemic and Zoom is really hard. I know even it's like awesome to see you guys, but also really hard not to be connecting with you in person as well, right? We can feel that like lack of intimacy and lack of closeness. And so all of the different ways that we can create that is, really wonderful. But yeah, the pandemic has been hard. There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of mourning to be had and done, and it continues to be a really anxious, time, just for people's like physical, health and safety, and also like desire to experience joy again. And that's all really hard. And so I think people, that if you ever needed more community, and if you ever needed a sharper intellectual toolkit to figure out how to sustain yourselves, to do this incredible work, it's now.
That was remarkable, Connie. Thank you for saying that. And I will definitely plug that somatics and community and self-care sessions have been a big important thing for us as a community in the past, and one we're committed to continuing, for all the reasons Connie just outlined, and because we have to sustain each other as humans and fighters and loved ones in this world. So thank you all again. And excitingly, the application for the 2022-23 Year of the Justice Initiative is now officially live. You all are on at the cutting edge of this moment of it becoming available. The application links will be shared in the chat right now. Just for clarity's sake, there's 3 different versions. One is if you're a student, law student, pre-law student, other kind of student who is new to the Justice Initiative, we have an application just for you. If you are a practitioner, an organizer, we have an application for you. And if you are a returning Justice Initiative member, we've got a special one just for y'all. So look out for those in the chat, on JI social media, in your email inbox. We've got those everywhere, and they are live now. They just take a few minutes. This is not an uber intense application. We know that everyone's sorting through a lot of lengthy applications from school right now, and decidedly this is not it. We want to just hear from you all about what you're interested in, what brings you to JI, so we can get a better understanding of how to have this community best serve you throughout this upcoming year. We also have the Q&A open. And so if anyone has any questions about the application or JI programming, feel free to share in the Q&A. And we will make sure that one of us is on it to answer that in the chat and talk it through. You can also email the Justice Initiative Gmail, which is also available on our social media, if any questions come up after the session. For those of us outside of the Boston area, is this exclusively in person? No, it's on Zoom. We love the idea of, if folks want to get viewing and participating parties together with folks at their school or in their city, that's welcome, but so that we can be accessible to folks across the world, which is our base of people, we do this on Zoom. International injustices, as well as its connection to our legal system. Yes, I'm realizing I'm fielding these, but other folks should feel free to hop in too. We do touch on internationalism. That's something that a lot of our speakers raise. It's also something, by nature of being an international community, comes up. But if folks have specific ideas of how to do that and tie that in, definitely open to hearing that. We're largely US focused because that's most of our membership, but we will not be US exclusive, because obviously that has a lot of consequences and is just inaccurate.
Yes. I was going to hop in real quick, Kelsey. So I'm part of a new initiative at the United Nations called the UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And we are really seeking to build out our critiques of both international affairs and the UN itself when it comes to issues like racial justice. There is a strain of critical theory that is called Third World Approaches to International Law. It uses the acronym TWEL. And for those who are interested in those types of topics, I'm always happy to chat. I'm going to put a link in the chat here for more information about 12. So we certainly love to have those discussions when it comes to critical theory and movements against colonialism and injustice, not just within the United States, but also globally.
Thank you, Justin. And I see some enthusiasm from Victoria in the chat about that. So that's great to hear, and sounds like there's the potential for some collaboration there. John, I was wondering if you could hop off mute to speak to a question we have in the Q&A about levels of engagement and commitments of fellows versus other levels of participation.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I had to leave the room up. We're having our first Justice Initiative in-person event, and the technology needs work. So I needed to step out. Here is my very brief answer. We're asking for students who are participating just as members this year to devote to coming to the significant majority of the Saturday sessions. It's important that they make that commitment early on. We're counting on that commitment in part so that we can build this community over time, and that we can also make sure we're providing audiences for the remarkable speakers who are coming, and so that we really have a chance to get to know each other over the course of the year. On top of that, we're asking for other people who have actually more time than just coming to Saturday sessions and want to participate in organizing working groups or in various other elements and tasks that the organization has. The details of that are, I'm not going to go into, but the whole point is that you will see in the application some opportunities to indicate a greater availability and interest. And if you have that time, we really want to involve you. Either way, anyone who applies is more or less saying that they want to be part of these Saturday sessions for the most part. That's the best I can do out here in the hallway. I hope that was helpful.
That was great. Thank you, John. We're from the hallway, from the classrooms to the streets. JI is everywhere we gotta be. Just checking if there's, oh, thanks to Billy in the chat, letting folks at Howard know that they will also have limited seating for folks to do JI in person there. That's amazing to hear. Hope to have more viewing parties hopping up around the country. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you have more questions that come up, feel free to DM us on Instagram or Twitter. We'll be checking those out. You can email us. We are here to answer your questions. Also want to make a plug for if you have friends, colleagues, professors, attorneys, organizers, mentors who you think would love this community, would be recharged by it, would be restored, renewed, loved on by this community. We are here to grow. We want to welcome folks. This is not a place about exclusivity or keeping the doors shut. So please, over these next 2 weeks and the months and years ahead, share this with anyone you think would love to be a part of this, would love to learn with us and share their perspective. With that, I'm going to ask one of my dear JI buds, Thea, to close us out with an affirmation. And Thea, before you do the affirmation, if you wouldn't mind just sharing from your beautiful wisdom why you brought the practice of affirmations to JI. I'm putting you a little on the spot with that, but why you think it's important we close this way and you've brought this practice to our community. And then after Thea's affirmation, in true JI fashion, we will be dancing ourselves out joyfully into the rest of our days. And thank you all again for being here. Thea, over to you.
Thank you, Kelsey, for doing an amazing job moderating during this info session. You've been killing it. Everyone's been killing it. As for the affirmations, I just thought it's a really good way to bookend this moment together. As we all learn all these big things, as we hear all this wisdom, it's just nice to just affirm the space that we are in together. So I'm putting the affirmation in the chat. And so we are here in solidarity during this seemingly apocalyptic moment of change, daring to imagine a radical change towards justice. It's an urgent moment, a scary moment, but it's also a moment that we share together. So this is a call to action. This info session, this moment is a call to action for us to build together, care for each other, and work together to make this moment with Justice Initiative a whole movement. So thank you all for being here today. I'm so excited to see you all in October 1st. And yeah, thank you to JI always.
Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. It sounds